The Cardinals keep their winning ways going and start the road trip off with a bang as Erick Fedde was brilliant. We'll talk about his milestone performance in our nation's capital, plus the Cardinals sneaking up on the Cubs in the division standings. All coming up on b-schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Friday, May 9th, 2025. The Cardinals are winners of 6 straight games, and they have a record above 500. Perhaps the vibes are beginning to turn for the Redbirds, and boy, oh boy, did they turn for Erick Fedde, who was facing off against his former team, the team that drafted him, the Washington Nationals, on Friday night at Nationals Park, and he was fantastic, going the distance in his first career complete game, and wouldn't you know it, it's a shutout. Fedde caps it off in the 9th inning. Key double play there after he was up over 100 pitches. But evidently, as we find out after the game on the Apple TV interview on the field with Fedde and the interviewer, of course, getting drenched with the water cooler. That's been a common trend for the Cardinals this season with the post-game interviews. You like the guys having a little bit of fun out there. I don't know if the Apple TV post-game commentator was aware that that was coming, though. Jim Hayes, of course, old hat on the FanDuel Sports Midwest broadcast at this point, knowing to try to avoid the water. He's not always successful in doing it, by the way. The other night at Busch Stadium, he walked into the interview room after the game and just completely drenched on his suit jacket. But nevertheless, the Cardinals having some fun. Erick Fedde pitching well, but mentioning after the game that it was a short conversation after the 8th inning with Oliver Marmol, who basically told him, go get it, it's yours, and that was the extent of it. And Erick Fedde, although you did see John King warming up at one point in the 9th inning, Fedde does find his way through, gets the double play, and then the pop out to Masyn Winn to end it. And I really appreciated seeing just the kind of grin on Masyn Winn's face after he caught the final out. That's just a good teammate. He was ready to give that ball to Erick Fedde, knew how much that would mean to his teammate, and they were all ready to give him some good-natured congratulations as a result of his fantastic start. But we got to talk about this Cardinal offense as well, which really paced the night and allowed for Erick Fedde to have the latitude that Ollie Marmol gave him in extending that outing. I mean, you're talking about coming off of a Thursday off day and then not needing your bullpen at all. And prior to this Friday night game, the Cardinals had consecutive outings from their rotation in which the starters went 7 innings. Sonny Gray goes 7 on Wednesday, and if you think back to Tuesday, Matthew Liberatore taking on Paul Skeens. Libby was fantastic in his 7 innings of work that night. So it's been a little bit of a respite for the bullpen, and I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. You might as well let Erick Fedde go out and finish it, though, when you've got such a robust lead as the Cardinals had, and they did it in many innings tonight. That's what's most impressive to me about the 10 runs. 10 runs, any way you slice it, it's going to be impressive. But how about some of these statistics? The Cardinals scored 10 runs without the use of the long ball. They didn't have a single homer in this game. They score in 6 of the 9 innings of this contest. The only innings they didn't score were the 2nd, the 6th, and the 7th. And the Cardinals had 3 different innings in which they posted a crooked number. 2 runs in the 1st, 2 more in the 5th, and 3 runs in the 8th inning. In a 10-0 win over the Nationals, the Cardinals win their 6th in a row. They are now 20-19 on the season. That's right, above 500. For the first time since, well, that opening homestand, they went 4-2. And shortly thereafter, we know what happened to the Cardinals on that first road trip. And they haven't been above 500 since. They had that 3-0 start against the Twins. They were 4-2 after the Angels series, were quickly swept out of Boston, and have not been above 500 since that point. April the 4th, when they were 4-3. was the last time they were above 500. They did claw back to a 9-9 record on April the 16th. That was at Steven Matt's start on a Wednesday afternoon at Busch Stadium. But that was the last time the Cardinals were at 500 prior to their win on Wednesday, the Sonny Gray outing against Pittsburgh, in which they clawed back to 19-19. They had to wait another day. Sometimes the off day in the middle of a long winning streak can be the momentum killer, but that was certainly not the case for the Cardinals on Friday night with the game that they put together. So let's talk about some of the highlights from this one for the Cardinals, some of the standout performers, aside from Erick Fedde, who we're obviously going to continue to discuss and praise. I know a common trope following an outing like that for a pitcher like Fedde, who is on an expiring contract, on a team like the Cardinals, who some in the fan base are still kind of anticipating this is not going to be a banner year for the club. So you start to think ahead toward July and say, hey, what about potentially that trade deadline looming? What do you do with Erick Fedde? Hey, maybe you trade him right now to avoid having him lose some value, right? Trade him off of a game like this. Well, I'll tell you now, it's far too early to be thinking about that, but it is fair to mention that Erick Fedde had a couple of rough starts in a row, and the walk totals were climbing for him. And we even mentioned on the show last week, heading into the weekend where Erick Fedde was due to pitch, I believe that was a weekend start that Fedde had against the New York Mets at Busch, and that was another one in which he just was okay. The Cardinals obviously were winners in that start from him because that came on the Sunday in which the Cardinals started this whole winning streak. But he was 5 innings, 3 runs that day. And while we see outings like that from Miles Mikolas and say, all right, that's just fine, he's keeping you in the game, I think with Fedde, there had been this desire to see him be more of a top half of the rotation type of guy for you. Not necessarily an ace, but I think when he was acquired for Tommy Edman, and we've seen all the good things Tommy Edman has done with the Dodgers since, it's kind of easy to poo-poo that trade, but all the more reason you'd like to see Fedde be kind of stationed, at least in our minds, toward the top half of that Cardinal rotation. But when he had the 7-run outing against the Brewers and then sort of a mediocre one against the Mets, Cardinals won the game, like I said, but it was not necessarily due to his contributions, and had 5 walks in that game against the Mets as well. You kind of start to say, all right, what are the expectations we have for Fedde? And I even said going into that Sunday start, which of course we even knew by that point that this was not a relevant thought, but I was making the case that the Cardinals should put Steven Matz out there one more time in the rotation and perhaps see what you get from him and maybe consider a swap of Matz back into the rotation on a more permanent basis with Fedde going to the bullpen. I wasn't necessarily advocating for that result. I just wanted to see the Cardinals start Matz one more time and let the chips fall where they may. They didn't. They let Fedde start, which was what they needed to do anyway on Sunday. I was advocating to give him one more look, and he was close to a quality start in that game Sunday. The Cardinals won that game 6-5. But the walks were certainly something you were keeping an eye on because it had been a trend for him, a guy who historically not a huge walk guy, was walking the world over the early part of the season. April 4th against the Red Sox was the first game in which this kind of streak began, where he struggled. 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, and 5. 6 consecutive outings for Erick Fedde. Those numbers I was reading off, his walk totals in those games. After a pretty good start in the first series of the season against the Twins, he went 6 innings, gave up no runs, or pardon me, 1 earned run, but had no walks allowed in that start on March the 29th. It was a long, winding road to this evening where we saw once again Erick Fedde have a walk-free outing. Was very, very sharp. 8 strikeouts, 6 hits allowed, no walks, no runs in a complete game shutout. Erick Fedde's first in the big leagues. And that's wonderful to see, and that's really what it needs to look like, I think, for the Cardinals to be the team that they have hopes to be within that clubhouse. You got to have a guy like Erick Fedde giving you more than just sort of lumped in there with Mikolas, lumped in there with the way that Palante's been pitching recently, where we talked about Sonny Gray, Matthew Liberatore, that's your 1-2 punch. And after that, it's kind of number 4s and number 5s rattling around in the back of the rotation. What Erick Fedde gave you tonight was stupendous and gives you, I think, some hope that he can end this season or however long he's with the Cardinals, he can be more than just a back-end type of arm when providing those types of outings. It's about doing it consistently, and this is obviously a great start toward that end, but we'll see 5 days from now if Fedde is able to keep it rolling. I just have to put pause on the notion of, trade him off of an outing like this. Gets the ERA down to 3.86. I don't know if Erick Fedde is going to be this good the rest of the way. Probably won't be. It's hard to be as good as he was on Friday night. But I also just think it's early to be, first of all, thinking that there's a market for starting pitchers of his caliber or really of any caliber right now. It's early May. The market is not yet developed. And Fedde is a guy that I think teams understand what he is. He's a middle of the rotation type of arm that when he gets rolling, he can certainly be more reliable than that. And don't get me wrong, I think there's going to be an attraction to his type of commodity when you get to the July trading deadline. But I don't think that's the way that it's handled in early May. And folks, let's wake up for a moment. It's not the way that it's handled in early May for a St. Louis Cardinals team that is above 500 right now. The Milwaukee Brewers took a loss to the Tampa Bay Rays on Friday night, 4-3. That was a competitive game. The Rays got the win at home. The Brewers dropped below 500. They're 19-20, so the Cardinals have leapt over Milwaukee for sole possession of second in the division. And don't look now, and you don't have to look because I'm just about to tell you, the Cubs are now within reach of the Cardinals as well. Chicago falling to the Mets on Friday night, 7-2. The Cubbies are 22-17. Cardinals are 20-19. That's a 2-game deficit now. All of a sudden, the Cardinals are right there in the mix in the Central. I know it's early. I know their record is not indicative of a playoff caliber record with the Cardinals win percentage at just .513. If you did a little extrapolating, multiplied .513 by 162, it's an 83 win pace. Lo and behold, the number that I kind of said they'd be right in that range to begin the season. Wouldn't surprise me if the Cardinals ended up in that range when it's all said and done, but that's also not a range that probably gets you into the playoffs. And if that's the Cardinals' record or their pace coming into the trading deadline period, it's going to be interesting, but I could see the Cardinals still shopping some guys. I'm not saying definitively it's going to be a fire sale, but I think the Cardinals, to not have their ears to the ground on selling guys like Fedde, like Helsley, like Steven Matz, and potentially others, I think for that to be the case, the Cardinals are going to have to be more than just a game or two above 500. More than just, you can kind of squint and see a path to the division. The proof of concept, I think, is going to be, or need to be, greater than that. The burden of proof, if you will, is on the roster itself to prove that this is more than a transition year. This was always a possibility that John Mozeliak has left open. Like when people talk about, I don't understand, why do the Cardinals say they're not trying to win this year? Well, that's not true. They are trying to win. They're doing it with more of a shoestring budget. They're doing it with a lower payroll. They're doing it with an eye on development in certain areas of the roster, which could be something that comes at the detriment of winning more games, right? I mean, they tried to trade Nolan Arenado, and at the time, as they were unable to do it, we thought, well, maybe that means they're in on this season. Well, they were never really out on this season. What it meant is you're going to have Arenado at third base, which is much more of a known commodity than whatever it would have looked like to have Gorman there every day. And I think the Cardinals have won more games as a result of having him around rather than Arenado being on the Astros or wherever else. But is it going to be enough to get the Cardinals to 5 to 7 to 10 games above 500 before you turn the calendar, 4th of July, getting into mid-July and starting to really heat up and thinking about trade talks? That's where it's going to be really interesting. And that's where I think this current road trip that they're on is going to be instrumental in figuring all that out. Because they haven't been able to win on the road to this point in the year. But I've also talked about my opinion, and Oli Marmol has shared his opinion, that that's kind of just baseball. That's just kind of noise in terms of the numbers. It's not real. It's not sticky. It's real because it's happened. But it's not sticky in so much as we expect or have reason to expect it to continue. When they've been so good at home, it's not that they're going to be just as good on the road and then they're one of the best teams in baseball, like if you were just looking at their home record. All the games count, but I think things will start to level out. What's probably going to happen is the road record's going to get a little better, and the home record probably comes back down to earth a little bit too. Although I wonder this, and I got this in a Twitter reply after the game today where the Cardinals won their 6th game in a row, where people said, you need to get back to Busch Stadium, Cardinals fans, and support this team. They're playing their asses off, and they deserve your support. And I said, you know what? I think the number for me, if the Cardinals go 6-2 on the rest of this road trip, which would be a 7-2 road trip overall, it would put the team 5 games above 500 heading back to Busch Stadium. The record, I believe, would be 26-21 if my math serves me well here, which I believe it does. I think that would be enough to have Busch Stadium noticeably different when you get back. Like you're coming up on Memorial Day weekend, you'll be in that week where Memorial Day will be the following Monday. I think the place is going to start to be jumping a little bit. School's going to be letting out. The ball club in that world would be coming off of a stretch where I'm trying to do that math. They've won 6 in a row. If they go 6 of 8 from here on out, that's 12 of 14 coming into whatever those next home games would be. I'll pull up the Cardinals schedule here to see some more information about the opponent there. The Tigers come into town on Monday, May the 19th. The D-backs would then be there for the weekend, which I guess is Memorial Day weekend. And then the Cardinals are back in the Beltway for Memorial Day on Monday, May 26th with a 2:05 start in Baltimore. Yeah, I think that even though it's not the most prominent of opponents, the Tigers and D-backs, I think that Memorial Day weekend at Busch ends up being pretty jumping in terms of the fans coming out. Especially, though, if the Cardinals are on a little bit of a roll coming into that, which I would say give them 6 of 8. You find a way to sweep this National Series, which was my prediction coming into the series. I said it on Sports Hub. I said it on this show. Or if I didn't say it on this show, I said it on KTGR on the big show earlier this week. If they can pull that off, and I think they can, then all you got to do is, win those next 2 series 2 out of 3. Or if you happen to drop a series, sweep the other one. Philly and Kansas City, 2 good teams right now, so I'm not saying it's going to be easy to run 6 of the next 8 after winning the opener of the road trip on Friday night. But I think if it happens, you'll start to see the narrative shift, and this could be a season-defining road trip. Even if they just win 5 of the next 8, that would be a 6-3 road trip out of 9 games. I think this could still be a season-defining road trip for the Cardinals, where they could potentially sort of shake loose of the whole narrative of they can't win on the road, and they just start to play a brand of baseball that matches what they've done at home. We saw it a little bit tonight, a lot of it tonight, in a 10-0 win. Let me know, Cardinals fans, your thoughts. Are the tides changing? Are they turning in the favor of the Cardinals and in the favor of your belief in the Cardinals to potentially have a summer that's more meaningful, full of more meaningful baseball than you anticipated? I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for you to predict that they're going to win the World Series or anything. But do you think this is going to be a summer of meaningful baseball based on what we're seeing right now? Because I kind of felt like it would be from the very beginning. I had lost that a little bit. I was kind of thinking, I might have been a little bit on the rosier side, and people are really going to have my head for it for saying 83-84 is my season prediction. If they end up looking like the team that was 14-19, potentially going into the tailspin against the Mets on that Sunday, but they won the doubleheader. That Michael McGreevy, I hate to say it, but it was the same day that another team in town played a game and didn't happen to win it. And since then, the Cardinals have been rolling. So did that other team, whose name escapes me, I just don't want to talk about it or think about it with the way that playoff series ended. But did they transfer some of their powers to the Cardinals? Because it seems like the timing is a little suspicious. Let's talk a little bit about the 10 runs the Cardinals scored tonight and some of the standout performers. Arenado with a 3-for-5 day. He scored a run. That was nice to see. Not super instrumental in the Cardinals picking up the runs that they scored, but did find a tally there in this game. 2-for-4 day for Contreras. He also reached on a walk. Drove in 3 runs, scored a run. He's up to a 739 OPS and a 252 average. As I've told you, Wilson Contreras is back, and I just don't think he's going anywhere. He could be putting up MVP-type numbers by the time it's all said and done this year. He really could be. Saw this tweet from Ethan Hannaford, who is with me tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. If you're listening to this and you want to hear some live programming, head on over to the Sports Hub STL YouTube channel around 10 a.m., where Ethan and I will be doing a Cardinals show. I think we're going to tackle the topic of, will it make sense for the Cardinals to consider moving Ivan Herrera to full-time DH at some point? And I'll save my thoughts on that topic for tomorrow, just a deep tease there. But Ethan Hannaford put this tweet out. Wilson Contreras is clearly back. Over his last 20 games prior to tonight, he had a 358 average, which ranks second in MLB over that span. A 463 on base, which is the best in baseball over that span. 1030 OPS, which was fourth. 4 homers, which is tied for seventh. And then, of course, his productivity tonight. 2-run double was key in the Cardinals' win. as he got things going early for St. Louis, pacing the first inning with that 2-run double. And he goes 2 for 4 with a walk, so those numbers largely went up. He's basically been one of, if not the best hitters in baseball over the past 21 games. So, yeah, I don't care where you bat him in the lineup. He's the heartbeat of this lineup at present. Guys like Brendan Donovan still plugging along, 1 for 4, on base a couple of times. Mason Wynn, same thing, 1 for 5, reached base a couple of times, had a walk involved there. Nootbaar also drew a walk. Wonder what the season tally is on Lars Nootbaar, who was 1 for 5 with a walk and a run scored. Season tally on walks versus strikeouts. Remember, that was my bold prediction. I may be falling a little bit shy on the bold prediction that he would be an all-star this year. 774 OPS. I think he's got to get that at least above 800 before garnering much consideration for that. But it still seems like a possibility. Lars Nootbaar this season, 29 walks, 27 strikeouts. We're still in play. It's going to be tough to maintain, but if anybody can do it, I think it's him. That would be my proudest bold prediction hit that I think I could have come up with, because that was kind of digging in the weeds a little bit. I predicted it before the season. I said he would have more walks than strikeouts this year. Last year in MLB, I believe that feat was accomplished by Juan Soto and Steven Kwan among full-time players. If there's anybody else that did it, shoot me a message and say, hey, you forgot somebody, because if Lars Nootbaar keeps this up, I'm going to be talking about it all summer, and I want to make sure to have the stat right from whoever may have accomplished it last year. But even in a day where it's like the guys at the top of the lineup didn't do anything crazy, Nootbaar 1 for 5, Wynn 1 for 5, Donovan 1 for 4, but they all reach base with a walk as well. And those are inning extenders when you're walking like the Cardinals lineup was seeing the ball tonight. 8 walks in the entire lineup. Pedro Pages, I know the season numbers don't just blow you away. He's got the OPS of 666 right now. Let's go up or down there on that one, Pedro, just real quick. Find a way to move to either direction. 242 average, but he was 1 for 3, couple of walks, and a couple of runs scored. He was working some tough walks tonight. Victor Scott was 1 for 3, had a run scored, an RBI, and also reached base via walk. It was just a constant theme of Cardinals being on base, and they left 10 men on base as well. Couple of double plays they hit into, but 5 for 17 with RISP. When you get that many opportunities with RISP and you come through 5 times, look, the average is whatever it is on that, 5 for 17. Doesn't seem like it's terrible, but it's not incredible either. Yeah, 294, pretty good. So they came through in the clutch when at least enough times, but my goodness, they were just getting so many men on base, it seemed inevitable that they eventually would. Ivan Herrera goes 1 for 4 in his return to the lineup. We told you he would be back with our last episode, breaking down the Luke and Baker demotion. Check that out on the b-schaeff Daily Spotify feed, by the way. One new follower today on Spotify. You can search b-schaeff Daily, your St. Louis Cardinals Talk everyday podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Herrera was 1 for 4 in his return, couple of RBIs, and his numbers look so good. 360 average, 1374 on the OPS. So up and down the lineup, the Cardinals had quite a few contributors. The one name I think I have not mentioned yet, Jordan Walker, and he went over today, but I'm not really going to poo-poo his day all that much because he did have a sacrifice fly to drive in a run. He did reach base via walk, and he scored a couple of times too. The couple of strikeouts, still a concern. His swing does not look great, but if he's drawing some walks, if he's contributing with a sac fly, maybe he is close to turning the corner. And you know what? The Cardinals are on a 6-game winning streak. You put him out there in right field as often as he's ready to be out there. I know that he has had some recent off days. As Oliver Marmol has described, he's doing work behind the scenes with Brant Brown, trying to fix some things in his swing and his approach and get back to 100% where he wants to be. And we saw Gorman was out of the lineup tonight, but did come in as a defensive replacement later on for Arenado. So we'll see. I think those two guys are going to continue to oscillate a little bit. And right now, when you have as many guys in the lineup that are performing as you do, might be hard to find, ways to get them both in there every single day, but they're going to continue to get their spots, and hopefully they turn the corner, because imagine what this Cardinals lineup looks like with the other guys doing what they're all doing, basically performing at a league average or better pace, with Nootbaar, Wynn, Arenado all at 750, 760, 770 or more OPS. Contreras is now up to 739. Donovan's at 855. Scott is at 771. That right there is 6 of your 9 daily players in the lineup, all performing at the same time. And I know the numbers in the 700s for OPS maybe don't blow you away, But when everybody's doing it, you have games like tonight where guys just keep getting on base. There's some slug in there. There's some timely hitting that's going to be involved in that. That's 6 of your 9. Herrera has to be in the lineup pretty much every day moving forward. He's double the OPS of those guys. Not quite, but he's got a 1,374 OPS. That'll come back down to earth. But, man, he's been really good. That's 7 of your 9. And then you're basically just looking for a conglomerate of, Pedro Pajes is pushing 700 now with a 666 OPS when he's in there behind the plate on days that Herrera is DHing, which could be more of a theme moving forward, as we talked about with the demotion of Luke and Baker in particular. Whether it's Pajes, whether it's Walker, whether it's Burleson, whether it's Gorman, and you throw Jose Barrero's name into that mix as well, finding a couple more spots in your lineup of guys that might be able to perform on a given day. And this ends up being a lineup with very few, if any, breaks for the opposing pitchers. And if you start to think that a Gorman or a Walker is a break, I tell you, I think they're going to be liable to punish you. So just continuing to maybe feed into that a little bit. We'll see what the Cardinals are able to do. But this was a fantastic night of offense for the Cardinals. They got to the opposing starter. They got to the bullpen. They made guys work. Really impressive all the way around for the Cardinals. 10-0 win over the Washington Nationals. Like I said, improving to 20-19 on the season. How do you feel about the Cardinals? Almost at the quarter pole here. 20-19, you play one more game, that's 40. And they're basically 25% of the way through the season. It's not quite Flag Day. That's about another month away. My guy Claibs always kind of looks to that to say that's the point at which you could kind of feel like you know what team you are. And maybe we still don't really know that for the Cardinals, and maybe that's okay. But continuing to watch the style of baseball has been a lot of fun, especially as the Cardinals have continued to rack up the wins. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about this team right now. And before we get out of here, we're going to do, as we often do, a little bit of minor league talk as we go down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh? As it so often is in AAA, it was a high-scoring game for the Memphis Redbirds taking on the Charlotte Knights on Friday. And I do expect there will be a doubleheader later on this weekend to talk about after the rain out earlier this week. But it was a football score in Charlotte, 13-10. The Redbirds get the late field goal to come out on top in this one. As the pitching, you don't want to talk about it. Ryan Fernandez, you really don't want to talk about it. Inning of work, 3 runs, all earned, couple of walks, still struggling. Bullpen has been a much different bullpen since he was sent down. I know Oli Marmol wanted to keep him around. I think they might have cost themselves in Atlanta by having him around. He's got to work through some things. I'm still a believer that Ryan Fernandez can make his way back, but he's probably going to have to prove it a little bit there before the Cardinals are ready or should be ready to call upon him again. Nick Anderson has been kind of kicking around down there still, and I'm not sure it's going to happen for him either. We'll see. But a 6.5 ERA for him after giving up a run. Riley O'Brien, that's the upside and worth mentioning on the bullpen side of things. 2 innings, 0s across the board, 4 strikeouts. If there's a guy in that Memphis bullpen today that I think, other than Fernandez, has a chance to contribute this year, it is still Riley O'Brien, in my opinion. I would put him above Swanson. Andre Gurnier might be another name that I would say that about, but we haven't seen him yet added to the 40-man, so we'll see on that front. But certainly that's what we're looking at when it comes to those guys, and a good night for Riley O'Brien was in the clutch as well, pitching the 8th and 9th innings with the Cardinals, or the Redbirds rather, having a close lead, and so he ends up with the win for Memphis. Offensively, he scored 13 runs. There's lots of highlights I'm sure to talk about. 2 for 4 for Fermin, who had 3 RBIs in this game. Similar to the big league Cardinals, they do all of this damage without the benefit of a home run tonight for the Redbirds of Memphis. So JC scored 3 runs with a 1 for 4 day. Jimmy Crooks was 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs on base a 4th time via walk. Cesar Prieto, that guy's just got a hit tool. And I'd like to see him up at the big league level at some point for the Cardinals, but I'm not really sure what the fit ends up being. I mean, you could almost make a case for a guy like Prieto over a Pozo once Herrera gets back, but Pozo's been hitting so well, I just don't see any reason to make that sort of change. If there does come a point in time here, I'll frame it this way. If there comes a point in time where the Cardinals decide they're going to send Gorman to Memphis to work through some things, which I think they're hesitant to do because it's that attitude of we've done that before, what's the point? which I think is maybe a fair way to look at it. It's kind of put up or shut up time for him and maybe even Walker as well. Although if there's some other things to work on through Walker with the swing patterns and things of that nature, may be worthwhile to send him for some development somewhere if they get to that point with him, which I don't think they are at this point, and I don't think they should be yet. But Prieto's a guy I would like to see, and he could potentially be one of those names where you say, oh, he just takes a good at-bat coming off the bench. Doesn't matter if he started the game or not, because he's just a hitter. He goes out and he hits. 5 for 6 for Prieto tonight. He's hitting .312 with an .850 OPS on the season for AAA, so good to see that from him, and we'll see if he gets a chance at some point. By the way, that would require a 40-man move. Another guy in the Memphis lineup, Michael Hellman, I don't know if that transaction was the one, and probably not worth keeping a 40-man spot at this point. Like, I don't think he's getting claimed. He's hitting 190 with a .530 OPS. If you needed a spot, you might be able to find one that way and still keep him as organizational depth. He was 0 for tonight in the Memphis Redbirds win. Springfield, 4-2 winners over the Travelers of Arkansas as things look pretty good for Max Rajic. Didn't give up any earned runs in 4 2/3 innings of work, 2 unearned runs, but only 2 hits and a walk to his credit, 5 strikeouts. Steadily improving from that 5.61 ERA that he currently carries. Former minor league pitcher of the year in the Cardinals organization. Would love to see him steady things out because it is looking pretty thin. I think the reason a lot of those Memphis games are what they are right now, 13-10, is because they just don't have a lot in the rotation. They're kind of grasping at who they could potentially run out there outside of McGreevy right now. Graceffo, of course, coming up to the big leagues. It's left the AAA rotation a little bit barren when it comes to some of the injuries that they've dealt with as well. Guys like Quinn Matthews having been out for a while. Tink Hence never appeared. Things of that nature. So we'll see if Rajic can be somebody that can establish himself. Offensively, we did not see J.J. Weatherholt in the lineup today. His numbers have fallen off the pace a little bit, by the way. My whole thing with him was let's see it for a couple more weeks and bump him up to Memphis. But that was the if, right? If he does it for a couple more weeks. He's down to like 750 or so on the OPS. It's been a little bit more of a rough go for Weatherholt, which is fine. He'll continue to grow and learn there at Springfield for the time being. But was out of the lineup today. Not sure if that's anything other than just a routine day off. But Nathan Church in the leadoff position had a nice day, 2 for 5 with a couple of runs driven in. He's hitting .315 with a .932 OPS on the season, and that was the 3rd home run of the season for Nathan Church, the 24-year-old left-handed hitting outfielder. Might be interesting to see him get a look at Memphis at some point. I'm not sure that he has a huge prospect pedigree, but the numbers certainly do jump off the page as of right now. So congrats to the Springfield Cardinals on their 4-2 win, improving to 15-16. They'll try to get over 500 with more games against the Travelers later on this weekend. That, though, is going to do it for Down on the Farm, and we'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys, as always, so very much for the support and for listening. Do feel free to check out in the video description below. If you'd like to support me further, the link to the YouTube membership is available to you there. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.